Hello and welcome to today's YouTube episode. My name is Amelia. For today's sewing journey we're going to be doing a sew along with this pattern. This is the Oxford dress. It's got some really beautiful features. Let's get started. Today I'm going to be focusing on the Oxford dress pattern. So you have to bear with me a bit on this one because my French isn't that great. But this is a French company. They are called Treize Coquelicot, I believe. Sorry if my pronunciation's not that great, but it translates to 13 poppies, so that's really lovely. I was actually gifted this pattern by Fanny, who runs the company, and the reason why she gifted it to me very kindly was because these patterns have just been released in English. So I am really excited to do a sew along with whoever wants to watch and see how this pattern goes, and I'm really excited that I'll be able to make it using the English version because, as you've just seen, my French is not very good. The fabric I have chosen to make the Oxford dress is this really lovely viscose fabric from Rainbow Fabrics, and as you can see it's got a beautiful black background and then it has got these lovely peach pink flowers on with green leaves, green foliage if you like. So really pretty fabric, really lovely weight and drape to it, and I think it will make a particularly lovely dress. Now I've chosen to make this this version here with the long sleeves and the tie cuffs, so I think that that will look really pretty in this fabric that I have chosen. And I'm ready to cut. So I've got all my pattern pieces cut out, ready to go. I have checked that there is enough fabric, so that is great, that won't be a problem. Obviously I can't have all the fabric laid out on the table because the table isn't long enough, but I will just pull it up as I go and I'm ready to start cutting. All the pieces cut out now. So the first thing that the instruction says to do is to sew the lining and the outer fabric right sides together at the shoulder seams and at the side seams. So I'm going to do that now. So that is either the lining or the outer top. We'll do the other one in a minute. The next instruction for the pattern is to attach the two skirt pieces I have cut at the side seams and gather them at the top and then attach them to the bodice. Because I've used the same fabric for the lining bodice and the outer bodice, it doesn't really matter what side I attach them to. So I'm going to get on with that and see how I get on. I have made it to here today. As you can see, I have done the outer bodice and attached it to the skirt. It's all gathered, it looks really great. I'm really pleased with how it's going. I will stop here today, however, because I need to have a tidy up and then I need to go to work soon. So I will pick this up another day and I can't wait to see how it turns out. Hiya, so today is day 2 making the Oxford dress. I was really pleased with the progress I made yesterday. I attached the bodice to the skirt, I'm sure you will remember. The next step in the pattern is to make the button loop that will fasten the button at the back of the neck. So I'm going to show you how to do that. If you already know how to do that, you might want to skip the next little bit of the clip. The next step of the pattern is to make the button loop. So what I've done here is I have cut the fabric on a 45-degree angle, cut it on the bias so that there is some stretch in the fabric, more stretch than if you cut it at a 90-degree angle. There's not really much stretch there at all. And this one, it is too long, I know it's too long, but it's about 14 centimeters by about 4 to 3.5 centimeters. So this is how I'm going to make the button loop. Obviously there's other ways to make the button loop, but this is the way that I prefer and I am going to show. As you can see, I have done a line of stitching all the way from the top to the bottom of this strip, and this line of stitching is about 7 millimeters wide. Okay, now I have to turn this in on itself, so before I do that I'm actually going to trim this excess. And the reason why you make it wider than it needs to be is because it's much easier to sew if it's wider, and then you can just trim the excess off as I'm doing now. If you make it narrower, you could imagine that it would be quite difficult to stitch that seam down rather than the wider one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a few stitches in the end here with the needle. I don't have a turner like some people do. If you do, that's great, you can use that, but I don't have that, so this is how I do it. And what I do is I just do like a little loop around the knot of the end there so it won't pull through, and then I actually just thread the needle backwards, so I put the blunt end of the needle through first and the sharp end last, and I just feed it through, and usually it works, so I'm just going to do that now. Just feed it all the way through until it gets to the other side. A couple more, there we go, there it is. And then what I do is I just pull it through, and this might take a little while to get it started, but I can feel it's going now, so there we go, and just pull it all the way through, and there is the belt loop. Not the belt loop, the button loop. There is the button loop, ready to be stitched into the back of the bodice. The way that this button loop is attached is we will put it in like this, facing, and I know it's a bit difficult to see because it's black, but basically it will be facing in, and it will be stitched 1 centimetre down and 1 centimetre in to allow for those seam allowances. And the reason why we stitch it in is because once it's stitched like that, we'll attach the lining, and then it will turn out and then become a button loop attaching to a button to this side. I have stitched that one down now, and as you can see, once the lining is attached, that will make a really good button loop. I'm pleased with it. What I am going to do though is I'm just going to trim off these tails because we don't actually need them. So as you can see, it was too long, but it's better to make it too long and be able to stitch it comfortably than make it too short, and then it makes it really hard to stitch on afterwards. The next step of the pattern is to stitch the lining and the outer bodice right sides together. So inside here I have got the lining piece and I have pinned it to the outer bodice. This is the outer bodice. Also, what you'll notice, which is a little bit different on this pattern, is that, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a cut down there. So what I'm going to do when I'm stitching is I'm going to sew all the way around the neckline. I'm going to get to here at the back, and then I'm going to stitch to the bottom, getting closer to where this cut ends, and then I'm going to stitch up. This is where our button loop is, and then I'm going to come back and join this shoulder seam here. So I'm going to do that now, and I will show you how I get on, because it's not very clear on this screen here. As you can see, I have successfully stitched the lining to the outer bodice around the neck and going down this cut as well. So because the cut is only on one side, I need to now make the cut on the other side and turn it all in on itself. So I'm just going to do that now. So I'm literally cutting down the same line, making sure I'm only cutting through one layer of fabric, because imagine if I cut through the front now as well, that would not be good. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to cut into these corners here. I don't know if you can see, just so that it turns out really nice and smooth. And I might need to come back and do that again because I don't want to cut the actual thread as I'm doing that. So as you can see there, I don't know if you can see that better, I have cut into those corners as well. Now is the moment of truth where I turn it in the right way, and as you can see I have clipped the curve of the neckline, and I have also trimmed the corners off where the back of the neck goes, where we did that button attachment. So let's turn it in on itself and see how we go. I'm really pleased with how that turned out. As you can see, it looks really good. The button loop has turned out well as well, so I'll be able to stitch a button on soon. The next instruction for the pattern is actually to hand stitch the inside of the lining to the skirt. But because I can do that later in front of the TV, I think I'll leave that one for now. That's the inside, and I will move on with the sleeves. To make the long sleeve version, I need to cut 2 pieces of fabric on the bias that are 10 centimeters by 3 centimeters long, and then I need to fold them in half, wrong sides together, and iron them. I'm going to do that now. For construction of the sleeve placket, you cut this slit up, and it's pretty much in the middle of the sleeve actually. Here are the binding strips I have cut. There's one there, there's 2 there. I did actually make them a bit bigger than 10 centimeters because I find sometimes with things like this it's better to have a bit over that you can cut off, like with the button loop, rather than finding that it's too short. So what I need to do is I need to match up the raw edges, and I need to pin this piece of binding all the way along the placket and stitch it in place. As you can see, I have stitched that down, so that was just stitching straight along the binding like that, having that cut or that slit open. What I need to do now is I need to turn it through to the wrong side, and I will make a little cut in here to make this step a little bit easier. Just a cut in there, and then I will turn that and stitch along. Oh, I might have to iron it first, but I will just stitch along here. I'll do it and then I'll show you. As you can see, I have now sewn that under, so that is stitched to the wrong side of the fabric. All the raw edges are concealed, which is great. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold it in on itself and then stitch. So just basically fold that placket in half and then stitch a 45-degree line down here. As you can see, there is a 45-degree stitch mark on the inside, and now when I put it down, I've ironed it, it folds nice and flat. So that is the first placket complete. The first placket complete there. The next step is to attach the sleeve to the bodice. So as you can see, I've done these gathering stitches because the sleeve gets gathered into the bodice. So I've done them from the front notches to the back notches. And I've got it pinned, ready to sew. And then I will overlock down that raw edge. I'm now at the point where I have attached the sleeve. I'm pleased with how the sleeve has gone in. The last step for the sleeve is to add the tie cuff, so I'm going to do that now. The next step of the pattern is to leave a gap in the sleeve tie. So the notches are here. I'm going to sew up and along to the notch. Then I'm going to sew from this notch to the end and down, and then turn it in the right way. Here you can see the end of the sleeve, and then this is the sleeve tie, and it has got this hole in it. Remember, we only stitched around the edges. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to gather this and put it into here. I have made it to here. So as you can see, this sleeve has been successfully put on. This sleeve here I'm yet to make and put on, but I will just be doing that in my own time now. I'm still to hem the dress and to attach the lining to the inside bodice as well, But apart from that, it's pretty much done. I'm really pleased with how it's looking. The fit is fantastic. It's really lovely and loose. There's lots of room in here, so it makes it super comfortable. I love these tie cuffs, and I'm really enjoying the neckline as well. I just think it's a super pretty dress, and I can't wait to finish it and share it with you. And now it's finished. This is it. I'll give you a twirl. I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. The cuffs have turned out beautifully. This is the neckline. The back you can see with the button closure. I've stitched down the lining on the inside. Remember, that was one thing I had to do, and I've hemmed it. So, really pleased with how it's turned out. And it's done. So that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the sew along. I really enjoyed making it and sharing it with you. It was lots of fun to look at some of those different techniques in more detail. I think you can tell I really like my Oxford dress. It is a great pattern. I would really recommend it. And that's it for today. So I hope you have a really lovely rest of your day, evening, or whatever time it is for you. And I will see you here again soon for more sewing adventures.